Hello there, Chloe here, and I'm just on to record the journey of my wild pregnancy and free birth with Carly. So yes, just going to be going through from my perspective, what that was like, obviously in difference. Obviously it was different to Jonah's. If you don't know, I'll give you a little brief story of what happened with Jonah. So standard pregnancy, followed all of the NHS guidelines, appointments, all of that sort of stuff, and it resulted in the result of that kind of dealings was I ended up being lied to and told that I had preeclampsia when I did not. I accepted an induction as I was told I had preeclampsia. I then came to find out after the birth that I never actually had preeclampsia and there was nothing medically wrong with me at all, which is a violation of what we call informed consent, as you must tell someone what's wrong with them. You can't lie to them. You can't lie to someone to get them to agree to a treatment. That is a violation of human rights. So I ended up suing the NHS and I ended up being successful. So that leads me on to my birth story with Carly. So conception. So Carly was not planned. I had just started actually tracking my cycle only a few months prior, as I'd been gifted a book by a friend and it had loads of information about the power of our periods. And so, yes, so I'd started tracking my cycle. I wasn't on any birth control, as, you know, I'd come off since before Jonah. I just found, well, I'd been doing all of this learning and research about, women and our natural cycles, and just learning actually how much, particularly the pill, I was on the pill for like, I think over 10 years before I came off it, just how much those affect. So for me, the pill, just so how much that affects our natural hormones. Other little things as well, like we know that the pill has side effects of depression and anxiety, like we already know this. And so I wasn't on any birth control. Oh, also sense of smell is a really interesting one. Apparently it changes our sense of smell, and that's one of those primal things that we have when we're seeking our partner. So, as I say, just started charting cycle. Yes. And so I remember actually joking with a friend, joking that I might be pregnant, but I wasn't. And I think at that point, that was before I knew. So it was almost like my higher self did know. Maybe I was just not believing it. Because when I looked back at my cycle tracking, I was trying to figure out, which occasion it was. Yes. So anyway, I think it was another full moon that I knew I was going to be bleeding, and then the full moon came and went and I wasn't bleeding, and that's when I was like, okay, I think I'm pregnant. So there we go. For the 2021 full moon in February. And there was something else I remembered in this moment. So I got a pregnancy test, found out that I was pregnant. And so when I found out that I was pregnant, a couple of things came back to me. So when Jonah was about 8 months, I was working at Glastonbury Festival. I was working backstage on one of the stages. I was part of the therapy team. One of the other therapists that was there, this was back when Jonah was 8 months old. One of the therapists there, so this year at Glastonbury was also, I think at that time that I was at Glastonbury, I just found out that the hospital had lied to me. I hadn't started the suing process yet, and I was in the middle of trying to deal with it with the hospital. So at Glastonbury, I was having a chat with one of the other therapists called Kerry, and I remember her saying to me before we left, and it stuck out in my mind, I remember her saying to me, you're going to have a little girl at some point. And I remember thinking, you crazy woman. And I remember this specifically. I was like, I am so traumatized from Jonah, and at this point I'd literally just found out definitively that the hospital had lied to me. My kind of world was crumbling down. As I had spent my whole life trusting and believing that doctors cared about me, and they just love me and they care about me and my baby, and I kind of felt like I'd been lied to by everyone. I was just like, hey, you told me to trust these people, and I trusted them, and look what's happened to me. I've been assaulted and left to whatever, just deal with it yourself. So yes, I remember it sticking out as oh my God, no, that's never happened. Like, I'm so traumatized from this birth that I'm never giving birth again. And so when I became pregnant, Kerry's comment came into my mind, and I went, this is the girl. There was another thing. I also kind of realised just how I was really scared to have a girl. I remember a few times, like, as Jonah was kind of like a baby and growing, like, oh, I'm so glad that I don't have a girl, because from my perspective, my conditioning growing up, the red thread, like, girls they're just, in my family, there's a lot of subservience, there's a lot of not being able to do what you wanted to do because you had to be doing other things that your parents wanted, your elders wanted. My grandmother was told by her grandfather, by her father, my great-grandfather, that we don't educate girls in this family. No, you are not able to go and get an education. And then my grandmother was actually called back home to look after ailing mothers. So there's just a lot of suppression. And so, yeah, I remember being really, really quite scared of having a girl before I had Carly. And yes, also this premonition from Carrie that this was coming. And I remember telling her, when I saw her the next time at Glastonbury, which was ironically the next time I was at Glastonbury was with both Carly and Jonah 3 years later, and yeah, Carly was the age that Jonah was the first year that we went. So yeah, that was a funny moment. So yes, found out that I was pregnant, and instantly I knew that I didn't want to do the NHS appointments like I did last time. I wasn't quite sure. I'd heard a little bit about free birth and things like that, but I hadn't really been delving super into everything because, as I say, it wasn't planned. So yes, so the positive pregnancy test kind of, pushed that. Right, okay, let's find out all this information. So when finding out I was pregnant, actually one of the first things that I did, well, actually I did nothing. I just sat with the information myself for a little bit, rather than going off and telling everyone else. I didn't even tell Jack straight away. I just wanted to sit with the information myself first. So I did just that. Then told Jack, and then just got to like reading and researching. I bought a couple of books, podcasts. So I started listening to the Free Birth Society podcasts, lots of different free birth stories. And then from there, I also joined a couple of free birth groups on on Facebook, as they were full of, you know, like-minded women that are also doing similar things, birthing outside of the system. So I joined these Facebook groups, and I think I just asked a couple of questions, like books, any books or recommendations. And so, yeah, I got a few book recommendations, and I got those. And I also asked the question about, just for some support and advice, really, is what I needed. But I also knew that I needed this support and advice from people that were doing the same thing, as I know that there's just, for some, there's a lot of fear around free birthing. So, yes, I went on a mission to educate myself in birthing outside of the system and what that's like in free birth. So yeah, joined these groups, and so one thing that I was concerned about was being accused of a concealed pregnancy, as that is something that I know is an automatic social services referral. So a concealed pregnancy is when the pregnancy is entirely concealed from anyone. So no friends, no family, nobody knows that you're pregnant. You cover your belly. It's super concealed. So just the fact that you have told, you know, your partner, your friends, you know, these ladies on the internet that were also free birthing, that is of itself proof that you are not concealing your pregnancy, because you are talking about it, you are telling people. So once that was cleared up, wonderful, I also called the GP surgery. So I was in Wales. I was in the Swansea area of Wales, so I called my local GPs and I told the receptionist that I was pregnant. So this was because I didn't want to be accused of a concealed pregnancy potentially later down the line. So that's why I rang and told the GPs. So I rang and told the GPs that I was pregnant, but I wouldn't require any of their NHS appointments or services, and that was because of what happened last time, because I was lied to. My human right to informed consent was violated, and I sued the NHS and they paid out. So that was fine. They took the phone call, and then actually I was kind of expecting like a call back from, you know, some of the midwifery team, but that didn't actually happen for a couple of weeks. And then I actually got a call from the midwife that I'd had with Jonah, and she started off the phone call saying, you know, hello, you're pregnant, and she was like, I hear that you don't want to have any scans, but you had a lot of problems with your blood pressure last time, didn't you? And I was like, no, actually I didn't. And so I said, I just asked, so okay, so the receptionist have told you that I am not requiring any NHS appointments. Have they told you why? She said no. And so I said, because this midwife that I'd had with Jonah, that I'd seen in the community most of the time that I was pregnant with Jonah, after we'd done the birth plan, I literally didn't see her because I was then in hospital, and that was it. So, and you know, she didn't come out and see me afterwards. So yeah, the person that I'd seen all the way through with Jonah, like, was just, had gone. So yeah, I hadn't seen her since before I'd given birth to Jonah. So yeah, when she was saying, you know, you had all these problems last time, I'm like, did I? And then I explained to her, I was like, did the receptionist tell you why I didn't want any appointments? And she said no. And so I explained that I was in the hospital, and, you know, I'd been told by doctors that, you know, I could make a stupid decision if I want, and other things like that, and the whole lie. At this point as well, by this point that I was pregnant with Carly, I'd just had the payout. So the payout had come in August, and then this was the February. So it'd only been a couple of months since, like, the payout. And so, yeah, as soon as I said, they lied to me and told me I had preeclampsia, and I sued them and I won, she just went, oh, and she was like, so I'm guessing you'll be free birthing then? And I was like, you'd be correct. And that was the last that I heard from her. She did say, you know, of course, if there's anything, you know, that you do need, that we are available, and I understood that. So that was that. And then I actually ended up moving houses. Yeah. Yeah, so I ended up then moving house. And then continuing on with just my research and learning about free birth. I also purchased the Free Birth Society's Complete Guide to Free Birth, and this was really, really, really invaluable. For me, it was a really good investment. I'd had a, you know, I know that basically independent midwives in the UK are, you know, at least I think a couple of £1,000. And I think I'd emailed an independent midwife just before I was moving house, actually. And I remember I was kind of arranging to have like that initial that initial kind of chat with her, and I'd messaged saying, like, can we arrange it after I've moved house because of, you know, internet sorting everything out, blah blah blah. And she replied and said, yes, that's absolutely fine. And then she put in the email that I needed to be very careful about moving boxes, etc, etc, etc. And straight away I was like, no, she's not for me. Before even meeting me, I felt so infantilized by that comment. Like, she thinks that I'm so unable to discern from myself whether I'm able to pick up a box, that she has to actually tell me without ever speaking to me or meeting me or knowing my capabilities, that I have to tell this woman to be careful when lifting boxes, because she can't possibly know herself. It's just, yeah, this so yeah, it's that infantilization and it's the drama triangle. I knew from that interaction, no, this one's not for me. And that was the only independent midwife in there's actually no independent midwives in South Wales. So the other options are doulas, but I really didn't want, that was one thing. I just didn't want anyone to be telling me or pushing their fears onto me or infantilizing me or thinking that I was too dumb or broken or, oh my God, little damsel in distress needs help. I just didn't want anyone that thought that I was incapable of making these choices for myself. I wanted people in my circle that trusted women and that trusted birth. So yes, so I went and got the Free Birth Society the Free Birth Society. I purchased their Complete Guide to Free Birth, which I found really, really, really invaluable. For me, it was way cheaper than hiring a doula. It was like, so UK prices, it worked out as like £300 for the course. And, you know, I know that a doula or independent midwife would have cost me thousands of pounds. So yeah, I was very happy with my with my purchase there, and then the books. And then I knew that if I did want to ask any advice, I could just go on the free birth groups that I was a part of and ask my question there. As there was there's just loads of women that are there that can offer their support and advice, obviously, if they so choose to, by responding to your question. So what else did I do? By this point I'd moved house. That was it. I was really craving to meet people in person. So this was just coming out of the end of COVID. So it was February 2021. Oh yeah, that was it. And I'm in Wales. So we just had a kind of like winter little lockdown as well. So there was still like loads of rules in place. I know that a lot of the new mothers that I'd been speaking to in this village, the ones that gave birth in hospital, which is most of them, all the COVID rules were still in place. So, you know, not allowed your partner with you, only after like active labour, which is like 4 centimetres. Well, they class it as. So yeah, so I knew there was going to be lots of rules and things like that, and I'll just put this out there now. COVID, I didn't play the Rona game. Yeah, no testing, no tracking, no tracing, no masking, no nothing for me. No thanks. Didn't want to play that game. So I started really craving, I really wanted to meet, because I was kind of had a lot of online free birth resources, but not a lot of in-person ones. And then on one of the free birth Facebook groups, a workshop, a 3-day in-person workshop actually popped up for somewhere in West Wales, which was actually only an hour away from where I now was. So I was very excited about this, booked to go on. So this was the kind of antenatal care that I did, and I paid for myself out of my pocket, as that's what I wanted to do. I didn't want the free NHS services, look where that got me last time. Assaulted in a hospital, traumatised. Obviously, I sued and won, got my justice, but I also learned my lesson that I wasn't going to go back there, because that was one of my reasonings, because some people would be, oh my god, you don't want to go into hospital, and it's just like, you think I'm the crazy one because I don't want to go back to a place where they lied to me, assaulted me, then tried to cover it up, then just whatever. You think I'm crazy for not wanting to go back somewhere where I was assaulted, and then they didn't care. So I booked into this workshop. This workshop was being taught by a lady called Joy Horner, who was she's not on the register anymore, but she was an independent midwife, she was a nurse, worked within the system for, it was just over 20 years. And one of her guides was a lady called Mary Cronk, and it just so happens that Joy had a lot of experience, ended up having a lot of clients in breech, so she's has loads of breech knowledge and information, which was really interesting. So other people that were on this course as well some of them were pregnant, some of them were birth keepers and doulas themselves. And so that was a really, really amazing and invaluable 3 days to spend in person with women that were doing the same thing. So I think at this point I was maybe 20 weeks. Yes. So yes, did this birth workshop. Some really interesting things that came up in this birth workshop. I got some really good advice, as I just had another interaction with a healthcare professional. So because I'd moved areas from Swansea, I was now in Carmarthenshire, so from Swansea to Carmarthenshire area, and this new area, and then new area, new village. Went to join the little, mum and toddler group that was local, and they let me know about the health visitors. And so essentially the health visitor came to welcome us to the area. Jonah needed they didn't say needed, because you don't have to, you can opt out of all of this. One of his 27-month checks that they do, I'd actually said in Swansea, no thanks, don't need this, because I didn't know that they were all optional beforehand. So this lady came over to to meet Jonah and also to meet me, and at this point I was, visibly showing. So after explaining to this lady, who turned up in a mask and gloves, by the way, I remember Jonah being asleep when she first arrived, and then he woke up and essentially just screamed and cried the entire time that she was there, just like this strange, I think to him it's just like this strange woman in the house and masked up, gloved up. So yeah, I remember that being interesting. And so before Jonah had woken up and I was explaining, what happened with Jonah and his pregnancy, because obviously she could see that I was pregnant. But yeah, I wasn't having any NHS checks or anything like that. So after explaining everything that happened in the hospital with Jonah and suing the NHS and winning, etc., etc., her response to me was, oh, well, hopefully you'll have a better experience in the local hospital down the road. And I just remember thinking, like, have you not been listening to a word I'm saying? Like, why do you think that I'm going back into a hospital? Like, I was just assaulted in one. So I didn't say that. I just remember kind of going, oh, okay. And then I actually did receive a letter from this health visitor a few days later, as she said that she needed to check with her higher up about my intentions, not to seek any medical advice. So I actually then got a letter from this lady saying, I spoke to my superiors about your intentions not to seek any medical advice. And so I don't actually recall saying this to her because I was doing the Free Birth Society Complete Guide to Free Birth. I was actually a few days, not so much, I think it was a couple of weeks after that meeting that I was going to this in-person workshop in West Wales. And so I just kind of, when I got this letter through, it just kind of felt like my words had been twisted a little bit. And then I was also slightly concerned because this letter that was now on my file, or would be in my file for these health visitors and everyone to look at, literally only has this the woman's point of view, in which she's stating that I have no intentions to seek any medical advice and they're very concerned, and gave me a list of all of these numbers and of the teams. And so what I ended up doing is I asked for some advice in this workshop as to whether to reply or not, and was given the advice, yes, reply, but keep it very factual. So that's exactly what I did. And so I replied saying, I don't recall telling you that I wasn't going to seek any medical advice. If you recall our conversation, and once again, just kept it brief, if you recall our conversation, I let you know that with my pregnancy with Jonah, I followed all of the NHS guidelines and advice, and that resulted in me being lied to. I sued the hospital and I won. And then I said, I'm doing these things. Not as a, well, almost as a kind of like justification, but also a like, well, almost like I know what I'm doing, or yeah. And I just dropped in there that I was familiar with birthrights.org and AIMS. Yeah, I thought those would be kind of like good ones to pop in there. So this strongly worded letter in response worked beautifully. So yeah, I didn't get any issues after that. I actually used the opportunity to reply and to ask for information. So I asked for the details of the child health department that I would need to then self-notify once Carly had been born. I also remember at one point this health visitor actually showed up, or prior to me replying, had actually showed up at my house twice without calling beforehand or anything like this. She would literally just turn up at my front door, and twice she said, "Oh, I don't usually do this," just turn up unannounced at people's doors, to which I replied, "Well, you've done it 2 out of 3 times now." And I also, that was it. That was why she was there. She said she was asking me for my consent well, this is the thing. She said she was asking for my consent to do something. And I was like, okay, so what am I consenting to? And she couldn't really give me an answer of what it was that I was supposed to be consenting to. I think it was like signing information for so this is the weird thing. Like, I don't actually know what it was that she was trying to get me to consent to. Because she was like, we just need your consent for, to pass on details or have your details. And I was just like, okay, and what are you going to do with them? Like, what am I consenting? And she couldn't answer the question. So consent was not given, as it wasn't informed consent. She couldn't give me the information of what I was consenting to. So it was also the first time in my life in which I've been in the position where someone else has been squirming. Like, I could tell she was incredibly uncomfortable, and she literally had no idea what to say. She was like fumbling over her words, which is the first time in my life that has ever happened to me. Usually it's the other way around. I would be the one fumbling. It was quite a surreal experience. It was also quite interesting, and it was just a really interesting thing to experience. Kind of like, you felt a bit powerful, but I was also like quite unnerved by the level of nervousness that she had it just made me think, like, oh my, like, she's really not confident in anything that she's saying, because I'm asking her very basic questions and she can't even answer it. It's almost just like, just do what I say and don't question anything. As I guess, kind of that's what's been happening really the last 2 years with Rona. Everyone's just doing what they're told without questioning anything. And because of what I'd just been through with Jonah, I was questioning everything. You know, that stage of life where you're like, why? I feel like I'm there now. I've got it afterwards. I'm like, I'm going to ask you why a billion times before I do something. So, yes, nipped that kind of bump in the bud. And that is the thing that is probably one of like the biggest lessons that I've learned with Carly. It's as many people said things like, oh, I can't believe they've let you do this or let you do that, they allowed you to do this. And it's just like with Jonah, I was very much like, well, they let me do this or they let me do that. Whereas with Carly, I was like, I'm not even giving them a chance to like let me do anything. I am telling them what I am going to do because I know what my rights are. And I think this was the thing with Jonah. I didn't know exactly what my rights were. You know, when midwives and doctors are telling you, you know, you have to do this for your baby, etc., etc., and they're giving all the reasons. Like, I genuinely thought they were being open and honest with me. And then after my experience with Jonah, I learned that actually most of the time they're not being really open and honest. They are being very selective about the information, cherry picking kind of scary data, not giving it with any context. They kind of use bullying and coercive tactics, and then if you don't agree, they tend to get a bit nastier then and throw in the dead baby card and all of these sorts of stuff. And it's actually what I found out, and from my personal belief, that there's a massive amount of psychological bullying and manipulation and coercion that goes on. I don't think it's it's not conscious. It's all kind of like happening underneath the surface, you know, because the drama triangle, this you know, hero, villain, victim is just kind of like baked into it. And so this was one thing that I was very aware of, is that system is in play, that the victim is us, the birthing women, the villain is the birth process or the baby itself, and then the heroes are the, you know, the NHS, the doctors. You know, you can't possibly get pregnant and be pregnant and stay pregnant and have a baby without being managed by me, or me as an NHS. Can't possibly. And so because I knew that this drama triangle system exists within the medical maternal system, I knew that as soon as I took myself out of the victim role, that would mean that I usually went to the villain role, and the people that were sitting there going, I'm the lovely hero, then felt like victims, because, oh my God, we're just trying to help you, poor little pregnant woman. You poor little pregnant woman. Yeah, you are so dangerous. You know, you don't want our help, you don't want our services. You must be a dangerous mother, you must not care about your baby, and all this other shit. When in actual fact, well, I say not in actual fact, but from my opinion, I've done far more research into physiological birth with Carly than I did with Jonah. Jonah, I didn't know anything. I just trusted them. I didn't learn about physiological birth. And that is one thing that I've also learned about hospitals, is that almost everything they do in a hospital is the opposite of physiological birth. So half of the stuff they do in hospital doesn't even make logical sense for the birthing process. It might make sense from a business point of view and making money and not draining your resources. If you've got, you know, if you're short staffed, say if you work in a restaurant, you know, when you're short staffed, you can't perform as well, you're stretched, you know, your customers aren't getting as good service. It's the same in a hospital. Like if you are short staffed, no one's getting, and no one's getting, you know, the level of care that they should, or the standards that they set for themselves. And so, yeah, just one of the ironic things is like, we're so, be nice to the NHS, they're so understaffed and they're working so hard and they're so overstretched and they're so stressed, and it's just like, oh yeah, okay, great, I'd love to go down there where they're all stressed and, you know, can't look after me, because there's just not enough time or equipment or anything. It just seems wild to me now. So this is where I'm at. I am, yeah, halfway through pregnancy. I have done I'm reading, I am going on courses, and essentially as well, I've moved house and I'm just looking after a toddler, really. So my days are quite busy. You know, it's not like I was with Jonah, just kind of like sitting around. As I remember going, I'm going to be busy for the rest of my life, so I'm going to rest this pregnancy. So yeah, I just continued soaking up all the information that I wanted to soak up. I did sit a few times with the idea of, you know, a doula or an independent midwife, but every time I did, sat with that and meditated with that, I was just like, no. Like I think it was, for me, it was part of my healing to do this for myself. So I'd spent my entire life essentially checking with other people before I made absolutely any decision. I checked with with my parents, with like my boyfriend. I really had a not very strong sense of self at all. I didn't trust myself. I didn't really like myself. So I would outsource my decision making and power all the time, which is why I ended up in the position that I did in the hospital. And so that is just one thing that I was really, really important. It was just that I didn't want to give my power away to someone else. I was also aware that I didn't want people infecting me with their fear. So another thing that happened just before I went on this birth workshop was that we had some family visiting, and yeah, my husband and wife, and essentially the wife revealed that she was incredibly concerned about my, choice to birth alone, and she was very concerned about death, me dying, which obviously is one of the, it's one of the fears that comes up, and it's one of the possibilities that may happen. But once again, every time I sat with that, I was just like, I just don't think that I'm going to die. I just don't think that I'm going to die when I give birth. I've given birth before. I think it's fine. I just wasn't scared. I didn't have that fear. And when I sat with it, I was just, when I truly sat with it, I just didn't believe it was going to happen to me. I just didn't entertain it as an option, maybe. And that was interesting, as after that visit ended, I actually went down to the stream at the bottom of my garden, and I said out loud, those are not my fears to carry. Mother Gaia, take them with you. And I just stood there and I literally shook it off, like, that is not my fear to carry. Once again, it's this, this kind of like the drama triangle comes into play. And yeah, this is one thing that I had learned from Jonah to Kali, that particularly when you're pregnancies, there's so much fear. Some people still have so much fear, and what's actually more normal is people will push that fear onto a pregnant woman because they're scared themselves, because they haven't dealt with their own fear or why they're scared or what that root cause is. So then they kind of spread it out. And so yeah, the following day was the birth workshop. So I actually asked, and I said, this is something that someone said to me, and Joy actually ended up pulling up a graphic in which shows where it showed that women are actually more likely to be murdered than they are to die in childbirth. You're more likely to die from not eating vegetables and from high blood pressure than you are to die in childbirth. So statistically speaking, yeah, more likely to get murdered than I am to die in childbirth. But do we go around, how often do we go around warning our female friends when they go out and about that they're going to be murdered? Very rarely, yet we push the fear of childbirth onto people all the time. Just interesting. And once again, that also come down to the red thread, so if the way that our mother's birth was in fear and in captivity, they will have fear. How did their mother's birth, once again, was it in fear or captivity, or was it at home? But yeah, there's a lot of, I was born in the 80s, and so yeah, there was a lot of there was a lot of medicalisation then, and also learnt from Joy that back in the day, and some other midwives that had been midwives back in the day as well, learnt that the whole coercion, consent, wasn't really a thing. You just told women what you were going to do to them. Oh, we're going to do this now, okay. So yeah, informed consent is kind of only really, or consent is only really kicked off massively. But yeah, every time I did kind of face a little hurdle, or someone from the healthcare profession being a little bit like, free mouthing, I just tell them what happened with Jonah. Oh yeah, I followed that. Or I'd say, have you heard of informed consent? And they'd be like, of course I have. And then I was like, did you know it's a human right? And you can't lie to someone. Well, I was lied to, and I sued and I won, and that literally shut everyone up. It just shut them up. They couldn't say anything. yeah. What else did I do? Oh yes, that was really interesting. So I also went and did a shamanic womb course when I was pregnant with Carly. I'd actually booked it before I was pregnant. But yeah, went and did that, and that was really interesting. I didn't obviously get many treatments, but it was very interesting being in the space and doing this training. I got to do a lot of practice, and it was just really special. And the course facilitator, and she tried all. Just kind of like connecting in with Babe a couple of times, and so yeah, already knew it was a girl. So this was the thing. I had no scans. So I'd learned from the Free Birth Society Complete Guide to Free Birth and other sources now actually that the ultrasound technology is actually harmful to human tissue. They use ultrasound to get rid of cancer cells. Scans were a no thank you from me, as there was nothing that, for me personally, there was nothing that I wanted to know or find out from a scan. One thing that, because my son has got the eye condition, I remember the midwife the first time around going, "Oh, I can't believe you never told us about that." And I was like, "It's because I didn't know. I didn't know it was a genetic condition, and B, there's nothing you can do anyway. There's nothing you can do in utero. There's nothing you can do. Well, you can have surgery out of utero, but it's just like one of those things. It's just like we would know, but there's nothing to be done about it, And so there was no kind of like thing that would happen to there was just nothing that I wanted managed from that sense. If my baby happens to be born with Down syndrome, but that's okay. That doesn't matter to me. Whereas, that's one of the reasons that they want you to do that test. And I know some people have actually been advised to terminate pregnancies due to this reason. And so I think that's just, that's own personal preference and what you're comfortable with dealing with. And, risk is subjective. So I'm just managing my pregnancy on my own, really. I bought some urine test strips off Amazon so I could test my levels of stuff. I already had the blood pressure monitor, but to be quite honest, I kind of would just pick it up and drop it, as I remember there a week in which I was doing it quite a lot, and I remember thinking, I feel like this is causing more issues than it's kind of trying to alleviate. Stress-wise, as that is one of the main things that pregnant women need to keep low is their stress. I just a couple of the books one of the books that I got was the Wise Woman Herbal, so herbs for the childbearing year. Lots of kind of teas. I had lots of nettle infusions. So obviously different to Jonah. There was no Jonah. I had prenatal vitamins, but this time around, just no. I used food and herbs. One thing that I might change if I go back, as knowing things that I know now, is that I was kind of veggie with both Carly and Jonah. Still ate eggs and cheese, but I would be full. I'm full meat now, and I would do that going forward with any other pregnancy as well. As I say, pregnancy, it went pretty quickly. I had a toddler. I just moved house into a new area. So was just busy trucking along, and yeah, just being pregnant. I did kind of keep myself to myself. Yeah, didn't tell. Well, it depends. You know, it depends. It depends. You kind of assess the situation and like how much information do I reveal? As I know, a lot of people have a lot of fear and around this. Yeah, as I say, COVID was still happening. Yeah, I think social distancing rules were still kind of in place. Yeah. So, yeah, I just didn't want to really, get involved with that. I knew that if I went to the hospital, I wouldn't be testing because I didn't test at all. And so, yeah, as I say, I just kind of kept myself to myself. Oh, that was it. Because I didn't have any scans, I did not have a due date. I only know from my own dates and from the moon, right? So, pregnant for like 10 full moons. And I had missed the first full moon in February, so that told me that I was like, by the full moon in November, I'm going to have had my baby. Intuition telling me, so I knew that a girl, because of what Kerry had said, and I knew this was the girl that was coming to me. Sorry, a bit emotional. Getting emotional. So yeah, I knew this was the girl that was coming to me. And so one of the things so my husband has a genetic eye condition, or he has an eye condition, it's genetic, it's called blepharophimosis, ptosis epicanthus inversus syndrome, or BPES for short. So when Jonah was born, one thing that I noticed, not opening his eyes, asked his mum for pictures of Jack as a baby, and so the pictures came through straight away, and I was just like instantly like, Jack, he's got your eye condition, because basically Jonah didn't open his eyes straight away, which I didn't know wasn't normal, but now I know that babies actually can open their eyes in utero, they open them straight away. So yeah, Jonah had this eye condition. And so what we now know is that any children that Jack and I have going forward, there will be a 50-50 chance as to whether they have BPES or not. So without this scan, well, the scan didn't even pick it up with Jonah, but yeah, I knew, my intuition was telling me that she's a girl, she does not have BPES. It wouldn't matter either way if she did or didn't. The only thing, if she did have BPES, is that for girls, there's the two different types, and one of them has the potential to affect ovulation. So there's a whole host of BPES females that essentially have premature ovarian failure. So everything happens earlier. So that was the only thing in my mind, that if it's a girl that does have BPES, that's something in the future we need to kind of keep an eye on, because there might be a possibility that if it is a girl with BPES and it's the type 1 or the type 2, that they will get premature ovarian failure. So nothing to do with what it looks like appearance wise, it's just, physiological, biological, different to normal in terms of ovulation. So that's just one of the things that would have been something to factor in if she was born and if she did have BPES. But yeah, as I say, my intuition was telling me she's a girl and she does not have BPES. I remember actually my neighbours, they kept on saying, they're like, what if it isn't a girl? And I'm like, then I'll be wrong. But I know I'm not. And it was almost, I remember, it always felt like my certainty and my trust in myself was very unnerving and uncomfortable for some people. And I know that's nothing to do with me, that is to do with themselves and how much they trust themselves as to how much, you know, they trust other women to birth. So yeah, just interesting interactions. Okay. So the weather started to get a bit colder, so yeah, just kind of remembering timings. So weather started to turn a bit colder. I started to get heavier, obviously. Yes, and I think as I started to get heavier, kind of like third trimester, a few little healthy things started to crop up. You know, just feeling tired. I got a bit of sciatica, and so where was it? It was mainly down my left leg, where sometimes it would feel, yeah, just a bit like nerve pain. And yeah, I just remember really, really wanting to take it easy. So there was a couple of things planned in what happened to be the weeks before I gave birth. As I didn't have any scans, I didn't have a due date. I just had my dates, and I didn't really want to do too much kind of like, oh, this many weeks, that many weeks, as I know that babies come when they're ready, and the physiology of birth is literally the baby. When the baby is ready to be born, it releases a hormone, right? And this hormone is released by the baby usually after their lungs have developed fully, which is the last thing to develop. So yeah, baby's lungs develop. They release a hormone. This hormone is picked up by the uterus's GABA receptors. Okay, then the uterus starts contracting. Okay, so there is a whole hormonal process to birth, which is usually in hospital interrupted. Okay, so yeah, I knew that she was going to come when she was ready. Yeah, people were asking. People that asked for my due date. Depending on who they were, sometimes I would just answer with like, oh, she'll be here before Christmas. Other times I would look at how many full moons are going on. I'd be like, oh, in 4 full moons time. Sometimes that was funny to give that answer, because, you know, if someone they could work out when the full moons were. But yeah, if they weren't, you know, in tune with the moon, they might just look at me like I had 3 heads. Which was always a little bit fun sometimes. Yeah, I really didn't want to give any kind of firm details, because I then didn't want all the messages coming through. I just didn't want, I thought the less information I give, there's the less information people can latch onto and control and fear and go, oh my God, and, you know, freak out over. There was another, so there was a difficult decision that I had to make also, and that was leading up to what turned out to be 2 weeks before I gave birth. But essentially there was a big family on my husband's side, a big family gathering. So there was a birthday I think it had been arranged like 2 years previously, but because of COVID, it got postponed. So this was the culmination. And I made the tough decision not to go to this event for a couple of different reasons. So, as I was saying, one of the reasons was that I was exhausted and I just wanted to rest. It was about a 5-hour drive away. And I was also going to be around the same family members that had been incredibly worried about my choices to, you know, birth alone, and that they were scared about me dying. So I knew that that was a possible conversation that would happen again. So yeah, that was another one of my concerns. There was also someone else that had told me that they were relying on me going because they wanted support from me through things that they were going through. And then I also received a message saying that everyone was very concerned about me and the state that I would be in, pregnancy. They're very worried about me in the vulnerable state that I'm in, and and that they would require me to do COVID testing because they were worried about me. And yeah, so I knew for all of these reasons that my decision was going to, well, at that point, it was a no, because what I could sense was that I was going to be viewed as a victim, you know, poor little Chloe, pregnant, COVID still going on, and so I didn't see myself as a victim. I didn't want to spend the whole weekend fighting and trying to convince everyone that I wasn't a victim and that actually I'm fine and birth works, the process is okay. Because I know that you can't make people change their mind if they've got fear that they haven't dealt with themselves and they're trying to push it on you. So this was another thing that, I knew that I'd be put into this victim role, and I also believed that I would be spending most of my time supporting other people feeling better about my decisions, when what I felt I needed was support myself. So yeah, because of those reasons, I chose not to go. I didn't want to be seen as a victim. I didn't want to essentially be there pacifying everyone else and making them feel better, when in actual fact, I wanted support myself. And I didn't think that I would get it. I thought that I would get judgment and fear, and I thought it would be a battle to make myself feel seen and heard, because, you know, the whole drama triangle, they're just trying to help me. So I made the decision not to go. And in hindsight, I know that I made the right decision. It was really, really tough because, I love my husband's family. It was a really, really tough decision not to go, but it was the best decision for me and my pregnancy at the time. It really was. I know that some may not understand that, but that's okay. It also happened to be what turned out to be maybe 10 or 12 days before I gave birth as well. So that was literally the last rest that I got, and I was actually really glad of it, because I'd been running around like an absolute nutter with Jonah. Because he was a toddler. So I also went to, so the following weekend I actually had my Reiki level 2, which amusingly I had it was supposed to be done like almost 2 years prior, but because COVID happened, the training got cancelled, and then it took almost 2 years for all of the details and to be kind of worked out again. So I went and did my Reiki level 2. So yeah, Carly is also attuned to Reiki level 2. So I went and did that, had a lovely weekend, and then that was the Saturday and Sunday, and I actually gave birth to Carly on the Thursday, the 28th of October. So those 4 days leading up to the birth were really interesting, because as I say, I didn't know that I didn't know exactly when my due date was. I was thinking that she was going to be born after Jonah's birthday, which was on the 11th of November. So around this time, just after the Reiki weekend, in my mind, in my own head, I've still got like two weeks or so left, maybe like longer. I actually started feeling a little bit rough after this Reiki weekend. I had a really bad cough. Actually, I made some some onion, thyme, and honey cough syrup. And I also pulled out my TENS machine to help with the sciatica pain, because there was a couple of times when I was walking and my leg would just give way because of the nerve pain. Or just kind of, my knee would kind of not fall down, but just kind of feel really unsteady underneath me. So I got my TENS machine set up. Was coughing a lot. I actually had ended up I'd messaged my friend, so I've ended up putting those pads, the maternity pads, I started putting those in my underwear, because every time I was coughing I was just weeing, because you're heavily pregnant with a full bladder and open legs and coughing, it just comes out. So Saturday, Sunday, so we're now on we're now on Wednesday, right? So I've got a bit of a cough. I actually then get a message from Kira saying that get a message from the lady that did that taught me the Reiki, that the other attendee had just tested positive for COVID, and GDPR, was it okay to give my details? So I said absolutely not, I do not consent. And so that was that on the Wednesday. So once again, I knew that I had a little cough, but I didn't test, or didn't, I'd never tested or tracked or traced or anything. So, to me it was just a cough. Or, just an illness everyone gets at, winter time. Or, as the seasons change. And so I was at home. I was at home, as I'd always have been, looking after my toddler. And yes, I had my cough syrup, had my pads, had the TENS machine on for the sciatica. And I actually remember it was the sciatica actually that was more unbearable than anything, because I was just because I'd never really had that much pelvic pain. You heard about all of the pelvic pain, but I never really had any pelvic or pubic bone pain. And I do remember thinking oh my god, I can't believe the women that have it for months and months, because just a couple of days of sciatica for me, I'm just how the bloody hell do people go through this for months and months? And I was what are the remedies to sciatica? So TENS machine is obviously acupressure points, and then my brain just thought, well, having the baby, because it's just the weight and the pressure of of your uterus and everything. So So yeah, and I just had a really, really, really serendipitous Wednesday. I had messaged I just found out from the lady that did the Reiki about the COVID, and I was like, no thanks, not playing this game. I let them know I was just, I'm so pregnant anyway, got sciatica, I'm probably not going anywhere anyway for a couple of weeks. So yeah, and then she actually offered to send some Reiki to me remotely in the evening, because I'd said that I had sciatica, and I was just like, yes please, that would be lovely. I also ended up messaging my friend as one thing that I was really interested, so one thing that I definitely wanted when Carly was born is I wanted the time of her birth, because astrology, I wanted to know her astrology chart, as that is something in my life that has really helped me, and I know the astrology of my children. So I was messaging her about the energies for birthing. Actually, for the energies, that was it. I was like, wow, the energies for birthing. I think I've got a couple more weeks. I think I was being alerted. Just, I think the sciatica mainly for me was the one that's like, right, okay, how long? Just because this is, it's tough looking after a toddler with sciatica, because he wants to run around all day. He loves being chased. He loves being outside. And here I am, like barely unable to walk at this point. So yeah, I ended up messaging her, and I was really honest, and I was like, to be honest, my love, I've got a cough. Every time I cough, I'm weeing. I've got these pads in. I've got sciatica. I'm a bit like, physically wise. And then, so yeah, I asked about the energies for birthing. As I said, I thought she was going to be born after Jonah's birthday, which was on the 11th of November. And at this point, we're on the 27th of October. So yeah. And then after looking at the charts, I remember her saying it's like good. She was just like, oh yeah, birthing. She was like, it's good birthing energy. And she actually said she's definitely ready to make her arrival. That was literally the words that she wrote. So the next message that I sent my friend was actually a picture of Carly having been born literally the following night. She sent that message at 9 o'clock. And yeah, by the next morning, Carly was here. My baby whisperer. She is the baby whisperer. She's done this several times. She also did it with Jonah. She was like, knew. She just knew. She said it with a couple of other people. Danny, the baby whisperer. So yeah, send a message to my friend on this Wednesday, and I go to bed early because I'm knackered. And 1 a.m. rolls round, my husband comes to bed, and his coming to bed woke me up, and I, as usual, needed to go to the toilet. And also, so every time I'd kind of gotten up in the weeks or months previously and gone to the loo, my belly had been like a little bit hard, So I just thought that was totally normal. But as I got back into bed, like the hardness didn't go away. Usually I would just go for a week, come back, fall straight back to sleep. This time, that is not what happened. The hardness didn't go away. And then I think I went to put on some TV, and then immediately kind of realized that I couldn't really focus on it. So I then put on my Beautiful Chorus, their resonance meditation playlist, and I was in like child's pose on my bed, like just swaying my hips back and forth. I don't know how long I was here for, maybe like an hour or so. I remember I elbowed Jack, and I was like, hey, can you go fill up the birth pool? But I said it really quietly, and his response at the time, we laugh about it now, was just like, oh, you want me to do that now? I think because I was so calm, I hadn't gone, hey, baby is going to be here tonight. It's happening. because with Jonah I'd been induced, I hadn't experienced myself going into labour naturally, so I kind of had one of those things where I don't know whether this is going to take hours and hours and hours now, or whether it's going to be really quick. So I just went with it. So swaying the hips, and then I went to elbow jack. He was like, oh, you want me to do that now? And I remember thinking, I didn't say this out loud, I remember thinking like, oh, I'm so sorry that giving birth is super inconvenient for you right now. You want to sleep. But I think, in hindsight, I'm just really calm, like, can you fill up the birth pool? And after that I got up myself because I wanted water relief, and I went to the bathroom and I started the bath. And then that is when I noticed my noises changed. I was like, whoa, this is feeling. I knew that she was coming, and I just wanted relief from the pain. So I'm just like, right, get in this bath. And my noises changed. So one thing that I learned in the free birth society course is that your jaw and your pelvis are connected. Also in the shamanic womb course, jaw and pelvis are connected. So you have to keep a loose jaw, loose fanny, loose pelvis, loose fan. Keep it all loose. So I was like, right, okay, keep it all loose. And then I think that, reminding myself to do that, obviously made my noises change, and then I think that alerted Jack, who then came into the bathroom, to then realise that, oh, my wife may be having this baby today, and he went to go fill up the birth pool, which in hindsight actually takes a while, so apparently it's best to like have it prepared and ready. So he goes to go start filling up the birth pool with air, pumping it up, not filling it up with water at this point. And yes, I get into the bath, and I'm lying down in the bath and literally just flowing with the surges. You just have to let it, they are you, it's just, they're not stronger than you, they are you getting your baby out. That's what it is. And so I could tell, so they changed. Obviously there's the contractions at the start, which are kind of like up and across, that you just, whereas then you get the pushing contractions, which are like down. So I got in the bath, and then I could tell that every contraction that was coming, or surge, whatever word you want to use, I felt the urge to push. So it was like I'd lie down in the bath in between the breaks, and then when there came the urge to push, I'd come up onto my knees, and then I'd just just let whatever noises wanted to come out. Just primal, just going with your body. And I remember that was it. I do remember at one point, I put my hand back there to grab some poop that was coming out, which there just so happened to be a teacup on the side, and the one that I'd used, I think, earlier in the day. So just pop that in there, lovely. And then, so just kind of went through this motion of like lying down to rest, and then like when the surges came, at one point I remember Jonah came in. I think my noises obviously woken him up, so I just grabbed my phone. I said, hi Jonah, my darling, it's all okay, I'm just in labour, having the baby. Called Jack, and then he wandered off, and then so I called Jack to be like, hey, our toddler, because this was like 3 o'clock in the morning or so now, like, hey, our toddler's awake, can you go sort him out, because I'm not going to get out of the bath right now and do anything, so you need to sort that out. And so he came back and sorted out Jonah. Oh, that was it. They came in and witnessed me for a contraction or two. And then Jack went and sorted out yeah, Jonah, and then he carried on like with the pool, filling up the pool with air. And I just continued with my surging. So at one point I had, well, that was it. I think it was getting to the point where I was pushing, and so by now, when I was kind of coming up, I was kneeling on one knee, and then one knee was up like this. And I was kind of like, I leant back at one point just to put my hand down there. And that is when I felt the amniotic sac just bulging out. I also felt pleasure. So, and this was something that no one had ever said that this could be a possibility. I now know it can, as essentially birth, if you surrender and allow, is potentially can be the biggest orgasm of your life. So I put my hand down there and felt pleasure. So, you know, when you are turned on and your juices are flowing, and you're wanting it and ready for it, and then you get touched there, you kind of feel this zing. That is what I felt. And for a couple of weeks afterwards, I remember feeling really like, a little bit like, ooh, maybe it felt uncomfortable, because I didn't know that, essentially that's, it's basically perfectly normal, and birth actually can be orgasmic and pleasurable. No one ever tells us that, do they? All we hear is that it's bloody painful and horrible, and this is what I would like to myth bust. Is that actually it's pleasurable. So I put my hand down and felt the amniotic sac bulging out and this zing of pleasure. And then and then very shortly afterwards, I think Jack came back into the bathroom and saw me in this position, and then that's when I said, like, her head's nearly here. And then and then my back was actually on the tap end, so when he ended up supporting my back, and then the next surge, her head was out, and then the next surge, her body was out. It was fetal ejection reflex. And she came out, so the amniotic sac was kind of like half draped over her face, because I'm guessing it obviously popped as she came out. Oh, just going back, one thing that was really interesting, as I was lying in bed, I actually remember her almost like wiggling in my belly to almost to line up, ready to come down the birth canal. So we then did a time check, so it was 4:37. So my husband came to bed at 1 a.m. and 4:37 she was out. I would say I was only in the bath for about 30 minutes, if that. Maybe I went into the bath at like 4 a.m. So she was and I would say like actual pushes like that primal thing, like less than 30. So she comes out. She doesn't cry straight away, but that's really quite normal, because they're, when they're born into calm environments, like they really are born peacefully. It's kind of, being born into like these strange rooms with all of these lights, that's like a bit scary and shocking for them. So it's actually really normal for a baby not to, really normal for a baby not to cry straight away. I did do a little like suction, an intrinsic instinctual suction of the nose and mouth, just because of the amniotic yeah, I'm not to accept was kind of like half draped over the face. So yeah, once she'd popped out, we Jack got all the towels ready and walked me into the bedroom. Got into the bed, Jonah was there like watching a film. Yeah, and it was just like, here we go. Like, it was, no like, oh my god, big thing. It's just like, yeah, here she is, part of the family. She latched, started feeding. I think it was about 90 minutes later, I remember feeling like, I want this placenta out of me now. So there was some like puppy pads on the floor, and I just literally got out of bed, squatted, placenta came out. We did a lotus birth. Well, the plan was to do a lotus birth, so we got a bowl, covered the placenta with some salts and things like that, and then but I think I only lasted like 24 hours because it was just kind of like, moving Carly around and the bowl and the placenta, and it gets kind of like, after all of the blood has obviously gone, it just gets like cold and floppy, and so after 24 hours we just did a cord burning, which involves 2 candles and and a bit of cardboard to protect babe. But that was that. The babe was born. Postpartum was very, very different. So with Jonah, like, I remember just feeling, I was just like so shell-shocked. I was traumatized after Jonah, and just kind of like in this like, this is what it feels. It just felt like, this, oh my god, I'm so traumatized, what the hell has just happened? And yet everyone around you is just like, oh my god, hello, I'm a grandmother now, oh la 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 la, isn't this so wonderful? And you're there like, what the fuck, oh my god. So very different. Very, very different. I had no visitors for like the first 2 weeks. I stayed in bed for 2 weeks, and then I came down onto the sofa for 2 weeks. I rested. I really respected and honoured what is known as the 4th trimester. It's so vital. Little things people might want to know about tearing. I don't know if I tore. I think maybe I did. Jack says that maybe I did, but I now know that when you tear, what you do is you stay in bed and you keep your legs together. There's other hints and tips. That honey, Manuka honey in particular, is a well-known one. Resting. So that's one thing that was a massive difference, and does make a huge difference in the postpartum period. 40 days. It's 40 days. That's what they say is the best to just basically be looked after by other people, and that's not them coming to hold the baby whilst you do everything. That is you, mama. You, mama, needs to be looked after and cared for. And and Jack was absolutely phenomenal at that. So and then just going easy on yourself. So there's many times within those first 4 weeks in which I'd get a burst of energy, like, I'm gonna do it today, and I'd go out into the garden, and 30 minutes later I'd be like, oh my fucking god. And it's just like, I can't even believe that I was just going after Jonah. I cannot believe I was like how active I was, and that I was going out and walking around, because yeah, there was no way that I wanted to do that with Carl. Okay, I'm just going to speak a little bit about the notification of birth, as I've just had a look. That was something that I popped on here to mention. So, the legalities of free birthing. So it is completely legal. So the NHS tests and booking in and things like that it's literally all optional. You do not have to do it. Although, you know, this information is not well known for various reasons. If you want to know more about the kind of intricacies of, you know, why they might offer things that they offer, then have a look at one of my other YouTube videos, which is the Sue story about me suing the NHS because of what happened with Jonah. So the only legal requirements women have when giving birth is to notify the Child Health Department of the birth. So yeah, that's something to point out. So these tests, you know, yeah, everything that they offer you within the NHS you don't actually have to do it. So this is one thing that happened a lot, you know, with Jonah, is, you know, I have to do this, we have to do that, we've got to do this, we've got to do that. We don't have to do anything because, free birth is entirely legal. The one thing that is illegal is impersonating a midwife, but that is if someone goes around pretending that they're a midwife when they're not. So as long as everyone's aware that, you know, the mother isn't a midwife, the father isn't a midwife, you know, whoever you have supporting you aren't official midwives. So notification of birth has to be done within 36 hours, according to the law at the moment, and the details that are on, it's the father. Or if you have, you know, an independent midwife or a doula can do it, but yeah. Anyway, Jack did ours. So I had already had the details of the head of midwifery for the local hospital, so I sent an email with all of the notification details that you need to give, you know, the birth date. It's just kind of, you know, generic details for their records, so they can be like, oh look, there's Chloe, human number, whatever number I am in the NHS, because you're a number, you have an NHS number, you're just a number. So here's my number, yeah, that lady that we have on record, all right, she's had a baby. And so we got an email back from the head of midwifery, but because I'd never booked in, okay, so according to the NHS maternity system, like, there's nothing on the file, I don't exist. All right, so because of that, because I'd had no tests or anything like that, so it's nothing to do with like illegal or illegal, it's just like purely bureaucratic, like their, you know, their forms and their filling in and their figures and whatnot. So we got an email back saying because of this, because I hadn't even booked in, I hadn't had any appointments at all, like didn't have the red book, didn't have the files, didn't have anything, essentially there's like no record of me. So what I'd need to do is we'd have to go to the GP and do it that way. So I didn't go down and take Carly, Jack went down to the GP's. And he said it was a bit funny because he said at first, when he said I need to register or like notify of a birth or they essentially thought that he was registering a new, you know, when you go change areas and a new patient, you find a new GP surgery, they literally thought that he was registering a new patient at a GP surgery, and that's when he had to say, no, I don't need to do this. My wife's just had a baby and we need to tell you that she's had a baby and give you all the details. And they responded with, oh, your midwife will do all of that. To which Jack said, she doesn't have a midwife. And then, because that's never happened before, so essentially he said he was waiting for a little bit because they had to call some people to find out what to do. They needed to find out exactly what form or piece of paperwork they had to give him. And so anyway, They ended up making a few phone calls. They gave Jack the piece of paper that he needed. He filled it out, gave it back to them, and then we got an email a few days later with the NHS number. So that was all done. Yes, so that is the wild pregnancy and free birth story of Carly from my perspective. If you've got any questions or wonderments or anything like that, then you can either pop them in the comments section here, or you can please find me on Instagram. Chloe's Cauldron is my handle. So yeah, you can always pop me a little message over there. Yeah, thanks for listening. I hope this was, I hope you got what you needed from listening to my story, whatever that may be. And yeah, you could do it. If you are a pregnant mama, you were literally designed to do this. I know it's easier said than done, and there's a lot of work to do. Obviously there are fears that are going to come up when you are pregnant and doing a journey or a free birth journey, but for me, it's almost part of the journey, going from maiden to mother, and dealing with those fears. Because there is no birth without fear. You'll always have fears come up, and that's okay. And it's what can we do to rectify those fears. That was something that was done in the birth workshop. Was dealing with fear. And so one of the things that we did was we, burnt our fears. But one of my main fears was being lied to again, as a doctor literally lied directly to my face. And so the ways that I mitigated the risk of, this fear of being lied to was just like, well, number one, I'm going to step away from that system. And number two, I knew that if I did ever choose to go into the hospital, that I would not be making any decisions without physically seeing the things myself. I would be telling anyone that was there, this is what happened last time. I need to see the figures myself before I make a decision, because unfortunately for you guys, they've literally lied to my face before. So this now has changed how I interact with the NHS, because I was lied to my face. And yeah, one of my things was how can you cannot control someone else's behavior. You can't control whether they lie to you or not. So what can I do? I can make them accountable for their actions. I can ask them to show me, so yes, yeah, fears will always come up. And it is how we deal with them. And also another huge one is visualizations. I only pictured my birth going the way that I wanted it to go. So I didn't have a specific place, like I'm going to be in this room or in here or in there. I just knew that I was going to be at home and I was going to be comfortable. And in hindsight, that was one of the huge differences between giving birth in hospital and giving birth at home, is that in hindsight, I now know that what I found in that hospital was just pure terror. I was so scared, and I knew at my core that all of these people that surrounded me in this hospital, they didn't love me. They did not care about me, not to the level that, my husband does and my family do. And that, I think on a deep soul level, we feel as women when we're giving birth. We know, right, when people love us and actually care for us. And we also know when they're scared or fearful or wanting to take advantage. we know. So, dear beautiful woman, I believe in you. You are powerful, you are capable, and it can feel pleasurable. But yes, thank you for listening if you've made it this far. I'm going to stop talking now because sometimes I just get a bit rambly. But yeah, as I say, if you have any other questions or queries or wonderments, yeah, either pop them in here or find me on social media. Chloe's Cauldron is my Insta handle. Chloe Clark Jevons is my name. I am a yoga teacher. I'm a massage therapist. I do Swedish pregnancy and childbirth massage and shamanic womb, and I love all things nature and herbs, and the power of women's wombs and our blood and our cycles. So much love, and thanks for watching / listening.